Hello, today is July 23rd, 2022. We're going to start with our disclaimer, go over our calls. The weekend's going to take a look, today an expanded look at the long-term picture, and then we'll make some predictions. This is my trading plan for Monday, July 25. Remember, I can be completely wrong, and if you're going to trade on this, do so at your own risk. We hit a target for today, 39.5250. I should say for Friday, 39.5250, and that target printed. This green line's a price at which an FOMC announcement was made. These are support resistance levels. Here was support. So we got the target. We have a new target generated, 4,002.87. Unless we gap down smartly, that'll be the call, but I think gapping down smartly certainly can't be ruled out. Look for the pattern with the early low. Tends to have a high in the final hour. We got that. Usually it's a positive pattern. When it's negative instead, it should lead to more weakness even if you don't close lower. That gets invalidated, of course, if we gap and overtake this high. This is what we said. These are my calls for next week's patterns. During the day, MEJT gave a buy signal. That's not enough to satisfy the target. We should trade higher than this, and that gives us the new target. We got sell signals in the afternoon, and that certainly worked. Friday afternoon's probably the last time I would look for a reversal of a downtrend like this. We have this big drop all day long. This blue line is the close. Note how we closed over the 11:30 Central Time low. So in the last 3.5 hours, the market actually rallied, even though Friday's the last time retail, Friday afternoon is certainly not the time when you look for retail customers to buck the trend. So when you recover like this, usually it'll keep on going and open higher Monday, especially with a higher MEJT target, and that makes it all the more negative if we don't. If we gap down instead, it invalidates this whole recovery and is very negative. Now we had a target of returning to this line, this trend line. We did return to the trend line. The break was at false. The target was to return to the trend line. We returned there and actually closed right on that line. If that line is going to hold its resistance, and you really want to hit resistance and either reverse promptly through it, or else that resistance can become support. So if we do continue higher from here, we've overcome resistance. If this line is going to work, you really want to be convinced fast Monday by gapping down. Doesn't mean you will gap down, but if that's going to work, you really want us to gap down. Well, here's the long-term count. We have a number of targets that work. I'm going to add one target, around 34.15 cash. Now we had these other targets around 29.78, 3,000, around 32.29 I've liked. The problem with 32.29 is you don't really have a good fib relationship between green C and green A. You don't have to, but it makes a prettier picture if you do. Now if green C is 1.618 times green A, that gives you the price, 34.14.94. And if that is the right idea. There's a pretty picture if we just modify these waves in here. This was the count we're using, and there certainly remains waves aligned right over here at 3229, but that's not the only way to count this. What if this is A and that's an ABC? So this would be A, then you'd have A, B, C. And magenta A would be equal to magenta C. And what's interesting is that if the 3415 target works, and if we stop here, gray C will equal gray A. There's really a lot of symmetry in this pattern. You can take the first wave up here, see it's equal to this wave. You can take the next wave down, and see it's equal to that wave down. You can take the next wave up, you can see it's equal to that wave up. Did I get that right? Yeah, that's equal to that wave up. And of course that brings us to here where A and C are equal. So I'd like the symmetry to be maintained. Just because I'd like it doesn't mean it will be. But at least the waves will align right at 341494. We'll call it 3415. Now it's interesting if that number works. Here's 3415. If that number works, you get a hit right over here at the 50%, at that low, which makes it pretty. And you can also get the waves aligned in other ways. You can have a lot of fun with this if you have nothing else to do in the afternoon. So waves will balance out at around 3415, and it's another reasonable target. And in addition, the advantage 3415 has over the 3229 target is there's a fib relationship between green A and green C, and also it aligns with the high pretty much on the square of 9. So that number has a lot going for it. Doesn't mean it's right. Right now we've completed 5 waves down. We've stopped right in the 4th wave of greater degree. And if we stop here and go up, I mean, you can justify it. But if we gap under this, it's a major break. And that hasn't happened yet, and maybe it won't. But if we break here, we could certainly drop several hundred points. If we don't, then we overcome resistance. And we don't have to guess on these things because it's going to be pretty obvious pretty soon one way or the other. Well, Monday's pattern has the early low. We could still gap up. There's a higher MEJT target. Unless we gap down smartly, the rules call for it to print. If this is a top here, gapping down smartly would be the ideal situation. If things work, that's what'll happen. And if they don't, it could be a big move in the other direction. Doesn't have to be, could be. The day-long decline could not manage a close under the midday low. Trendline support has not been violated on the closing basis. We completed 5 waves down. All that's bullish if it's maintained at Monday's open. Friday's normal bullish pattern was negative instead, and unless we promptly overtake Friday's high, this should lead to a lower price fairly soon. The NASDAQ McClellan oscillator has reversed through its Bollinger Band. That gives a sell, and the waves are aligned for a sizable drop. So if the bears are going to make their move, next week should be the time to do it. I mean, everything's lined up. Now, when everything's lined up and it doesn't work, it can lead to a big move in the other direction. But everything is lined up for a big drop next week. And if we don't gap and promptly undertake this low, I might tend to keep my powder dry at least until the FOMC announcement on Wednesday. But if we do, everything is aligned for a sizable drop. All we need is to get invalidation of this late recovery. And of course, that hasn't happened yet, and there is a higher target. So we'll have to see what Monday has to hold for us. I'm hoping to see us gap under this low, but that doesn't mean it'll happen. And if we don't, I do have the higher target. Monday's pattern has the early low, and that's today's call.